G'day Toyota Coaster owners and light truck owners. We're going to be talking about the tools you need to remove and replace your wheel nuts on your vehicle. In my case here, these are done up to 515 Newton meters. I cannot remove them with this huge bar, okay, and the socket. I have to actually have two extensions, which gives me an extra 1.5 meters onto that bar just to get them off. Alright, now I prefer to torque my wheel nuts when I'm putting them back on, so at least on the right hand side you can do that, but you can't do that on the left hand side unless you've got a reversible torque wrench, which would be highly advisable. Otherwise you're going to have to get used to the feel of feeling how tight you're doing this side up, and then transfer that feel to the left hand side is the only other way you could do it. Alright, we're going to be using a torque multiplier, okay, to get this off, rather than this huge monstrosity of bars and stuff. Less weight to carry around in the bus too, rather than there's a good 5-10 kilos sitting there, so we can get rid of that weight. Alright, we're talking about the eBay special. This is a 3.5 to 1. Alright, it's got the little bar on it that you put into there, and that locks the unit up when you go to undo your wheel nuts. You'll have to purchase a socket, alright, 41mm, alright, and this socket is special because it's got a deep reach in there, and that becomes important when we're doing the back because of that square nut, the double wheel nuts. The socket I had was interfering on the square nut and it wasn't getting penetration onto the wheel nut properly, and it became hard to undo them, but we'll talk about that later. So that cost me 60 bucks from a man's toy shop, 41mm, so all you have to do is make sure that they're deep enough, okay, in the socket. 3/4 inch drive to match the multiplier. So we can just put that on like so. You get the bar, you put it in, press the pin to lock it up, and then if we're going to be undoing this, then this bar is going to rotate like that, and it needs to stop on something, okay? I can't undo that wheel nut as it sits. I can undo the bottom one, because the bar will come down and hit the ground, and then it's just a matter of, you can use a 1/2 inch bar and undo it, alright? Now it's going to be a darn sight easier. See, I can actually undo that. Okay, not a problem. Alright, and that was torqued up to the correct torque, and I can do it with a normal 1/2 inch drive bar, as you can see there. It makes taking wheel nuts off and putting them back on a breeze. Alright, when you do it back up, of course, this bar is going to swing that way, and you put your torque wrench on here, and I'll just do that up a little bit that it came undone, and you do it up, okay, so torque wrench and click off. Now, doing them back up using a multiplier, there's going to be frictional losses in that multiplier. You have to have it tested by a third party, people that test instrumentation and torque wrenches, check the accuracy of them. You want to know the efficiency of this unit so you can calculate what torque you have to apply on it with your torque wrench to get 515 Newton meters, if that's what your wheel nuts are done up to in your particular vehicle. So you need to find out that frictional loss. Alright, if you operate it at 100%, if I was to calculate 3.5 to 1 into 515, I'll work out exactly how many Newton meters I've got to put on that. It'll be under torqued, alright, because there is frictional losses, and that under torque could be 100 Newton meters. So instead of doing your nuts up to 515, you're probably only doing them up to 400 or thereabouts. So yeah, so once you buy one of these things, have it tested. I have got an appointment actually next week to get this tested, to find out exactly what torque I need to apply to it to get my 515 Newton meters. Get the pin out, you use that little extractor tool, push that pin back in, and take the head off, and pack it all away. Alright, so the only extra thing we really bought was the multiplier and that socket. Alright, there's one more socket you're going to need. So let's go to the back wheel and investigate what we need to do the back. Okay, the back becomes a bit of a different story. It's double wheels, so it's got two different wheel nuts on it. We still use that 41mm socket to go over and flush up against the rim, and that's why I had to purchase this socket from a man's toy shop to make sure that it went all the way up and touched the rim itself, whereas the socket I had before only went on about 3mm, and that was not satisfactory. So the next little tool you're going to need is a 21mm square, okay, to get that second wheel nut off. Okay, once the outside wheel comes off, then you're left with the inner wheel, which is the same configuration as the front. So then we go back to using that long bar. Alright, but yeah, when we get to that, we get to that. Alright, here's a little trick for you. Get yourself a little bit of bar, 18mm, the same as that setup, but we can't obviously use this long bar in here because it's just in too deep. And if you start using extensions into here, or a 1/2 inch drive extension to bring this right out here so you can actually use it, you're creating unnecessary downward force on the socket and equipment. And that's not what you want. So I've got this little bar modified, and we'll put the socket on. I'll show you how this actually works, and we'll show it on this wheel here. Now you're going to have to hang on to it because it's not pinned, but what happens is when you start to undo it, this will come down and lock up against the wheel, yeah? So I can easily, what I'll end up doing here, see the angle there, it needs to come out just that little bit. And I do have an adapter that goes in there that brings it out to a hexagon drive. Then I just put a socket on here and then I can undo it. But you get the gist here, right? So you go in there and then I just keep pushing on that hold up against the rim, and that will come off quite easily. When you go to put it back on, obviously this is going to swing that way. I've actually built a little taper into that, so it's not biting in on a sharp edge. And then again, I'll put my torque wrench on that, and of course with the little extension adapters, and I do it up. Only for the right hand side though, not the left. Alright, so once you get those nuts off, you then pull your wheel off, and then you have the inner wheel. Then you can go back to the long bar in there, lock her in, and then you can undo the inner wheel just like you did the front wheel. Okay, easy as. And I've got other adapters here that are not necessary anymore, but I do have an adapter to go from this 1-inch socket and bring it down to a 3/4 drive, so that this tool fits onto it. Alright, if you can find a 21mm adapter with a 3/4 drive on the other end, that's obviously preferable, because the less adapters you need on your tooling, the better. Alright, so yeah, this actually I stole out of the 58:1 multiplier that I've got. So one day I'm at the man's toy shop, I'll see if I can find a 3/4 inch version of it, and that'll save me running that adapter, which isn't cheap either, $50 friggin' for just that adapter from 3/4 to 1 inch. So these things cost money, so the less money you spend the better. So that's how we remove the wheels, and fitting them is obviously the reverse. You would use this bar first to put the inner wheel in, and then you fit this little contraption in there to do the outer wheel. And that has worked out extremely well for me, that little bar. Only cost me $15 from a steel merchant who cut it up to size for me. I think it's about 140mm long. So yeah, you definitely need to have that little bar to go into your multiplier just to hold it still. And that's basically the tools you need, guys. Torque wrench for the right hand side. If you've got a reversible torque wrench, oh wow, way better, way better. Then at least you can torque up the left hand side. But remember, have this tested for frictional loss so that you know the ratio of it. Marked as 3.5, but it won't after torsional losses. So how do we test the ratio once you've got this? Alright, you can see I've got a little paint mark in there. Don't know if it come up on camera. But you hold this in the vise, you put that flat straight up and down. I used a spirit level so that it was dead accurate when I brought it back to 0. And then I applied a ratchet onto that, and I counted how many turns this ratchet went around for that flat to come one turn around and sit back at level again. Alright, and that's how you work out your multiplication. Alright, so yeah, this one was a 3.5. They advertised it as a 3, and that wouldn't surprise me actually. It could come back to 3 after frictional losses. So, but we're going to get that tested next week and make sure that we're torquing these up correctly. So that's about all the tooling you need to take a wheel off and put it back on. Very simple. For those more experienced people, you may do away with the torque wrench once you get that feel of how tight things have got to be undone. You could probably just carry around a 1/2 inch breaker bar and do your left hand side and your right hand side without a torque wrench after you've used your torque wrench for a while. You'll get used to how tight it is. And the good thing about only being 3 to 1, if you're a little bit out with your input torque, either way, plus or minus, then it's not going to make a huge difference on your output. Alright, unlike the 58 to 1 that I talked about in my little review on multipliers. You make a small mistake with that one, it's a huge mistake on the output, and you can destroy studs and nuts like I did once. Alright, so you've got to be very careful with multipliers, not undoing stuff, but doing stuff back up. Alright, you want to make sure that you know that frictional loss factor, and then you can calculate that into what it actually really is in a real life situation. Alright guys, hope that helped you get your wheels on and off your Toyota Coaster or your light truck or whatever you happen to own. And I'm sure most of you already got a multiplier. If you haven't, you're probably doing it the hard way with huge bars and extensions, and that was too much hard work for me. Just getting the wheel off is enough drama from the weight. But yeah, we get by with these tools. Certainly helped getting them off and back on again. So yeah, hope that helped you out, and go out on eBay now and get yourself a multiplier to do the job for you and make life easy. Catch you in another video.